Hi guys, so Ian Paisley Jr, who's a Member of Parliament for the Brexit supporting DUP in Northern Ireland, was at the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee where he was attempting to grill Lord Frost, the Brexit Minister. Unfortunately for Ian, Lord Frost had got up a little bit earlier in the morning and he was willing to put Ian Paisley back in his box. So let's hear the exchange.
You will know that the Unionist people of Northern Ireland feel utterly betrayed by this protocol. You will know that the business community feel at best hamstrung, if not under pressure as a result of it, and you'll know that there's been community unrest. Now, I want to look at some of the mixed messages that have flowed as a result of that. So a few weeks ago, your stated position was that the protocol is not sustainable. And this morning you're saying you're looking at ways of operating it. And we've also had government ministers talking about implementing the protocol in full. I would like to understand, what is the government's current objective? If it is not sustainable, and I agree with that position, it is not sustainable, what is the objective from here on to fix this problem?
Now, it must be remembered that the DUP campaigned for Brexit, they voted for Brexit, they stood by Brexit, they continue to stand by Brexit. Their argument is the problem is the protocol, not Brexit.
Lord Frost?
Yeah, so I think my accurate quote, in fact, was that I said that it's hard to see that as currently operated it can be sustainable for long, which I think is a sort of slightly different nuance on this, and was an attempt to reflect the fact that there are ongoing political developments in Northern Ireland, and the situation there changes over time. Our wish, and I think the PM was fairly clear about that, both in public and in private, was that we need to find agreed solutions which enable the protocol to operate in a way that is consistent with the Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions, so east-west as well as north-south, and that doesn't undermine the consent of either community in Northern Ireland, either broad community, to its operation. If we can't do that, and at the moment we aren't making a lot of progress on that, if we can't do that, then all options are on the table for what happens next. But obviously we would rather find agreed solutions that work for everybody, because they are the most durable and most likely to last. We have to keep in mind also the consent provisions in the protocol, which are highly unusual, very important to what we agreed in 2019, and make clear that it can only be sustained with the broad consent of people in Northern Ireland and their representatives, and that makes it different.
This is so. The problem here for Ian Paisley is that he represents a minority that want to dump the protocol. Lord Frost has made it very clear here, and he was being correct when he said that it requires the community as a whole. It requires everyone in Northern Ireland through their elected representatives. What he's talking about here, of course, is the Northern Ireland Assembly. It will be the Northern Ireland Assembly that will decide if the protocol is to be dumped, not the DUP. The DUP are trying to undermine the protocol by saying that it's unworkable. They're latching on to whatever language Lord Frost has been using to attempt to undermine the protocol. But the protocol can only be taken away by the people of Northern Ireland in their assembly. The DUP do not have a majority in the assembly. The majority in the assembly is actually pro-maintaining the protocol. Now, I've said before, not many people are happy with the protocol, but it's the only game in town. Businesses are understanding the implementation of the protocol is creating problems for them, but this is a consequence of Brexit. Many of them understand that, and they're trying to find alternative solutions. They're trying to find ways of increasing production of goods in Northern Ireland to satisfy their customers. They're trying to find goods from the Republic of Ireland or from the EU that can be used to satisfy their customers as well. The people who want to tear down the protocol are the DUP, and the DUP are not the majority.
Other colleagues will come to the issue of consent in a moment.
So what he's trying to say when he talks about consent is that, yes, but the consent of the Unionist community has not been taken on board. The Unionist community is split on this. Not everyone in the Unionist community want the protocol torn up. A small minority want the protocol torn up. And we don't want a case of the dog being wagged by the tail here. We want the Northern Ireland Assembly to decide the fate of the protocol.
Yeah. If we could look at then at this issue of options that you then have available to you. So the previous Secretary of State told this committee in 2019 that the protocol would be light touch for businesses. The Prime Minister went further, and in my constituency, he told business people that they could bin it if it wasn't working.
Boris Johnson is a liar. I know Boris Johnson is a liar. Lord Frost knows Boris Johnson is a liar. Maybe someday Ian Paisley will wake up and understand that Boris Johnson is a liar. Boris Johnson's lying doesn't make any difference now. That ship has sailed. We have the contract. Whether Boris Johnson lied about how to get the contract, whether he lied what was in the contract, does not matter anymore. I'm not a fan of Boris Johnson in any way at all. Not one bit. But whatever Boris Johnson says is irrelevant. What's in the contract is what matters. And the contract is the Northern Ireland Protocol. So talking about what Boris Johnson said when he came to my constituency is irrelevant. It doesn't make any difference, Ian. You have to look at the contract, the protocol instead.
So what are the options? I mean, is the government, when it says everything's on the table, are you seriously going to unilaterally scrap it if it doesn't work, if these operations can't be sustained?
I don't see the UK government. Now, is it impossible that the UK government would scrap the protocol? It's not impossible, but I think it's highly unlikely, because it would mean undermining the Good Friday Agreement. So I don't see the UK government doing that. I think what's actually going to happen is probably the UK government are just going to allow these grace periods to end. Chilled meats will be banned from entering Northern Ireland. The people in Northern Ireland will complain for a few days or a few weeks. There will be a distraction. Maybe Boris Johnson will announce another child or something, I don't know. Or Matt Hancock will be fired, and that will be in the papers for a few days. That will be the distraction. And then we'll move on. And Northern Ireland will be forgotten. The Unionist community, once again, will be ignored. They have no power over Boris Johnson. So I may be right, I may be wrong, but I'm more on the side of Boris Johnson letting the grace periods for these chilled meats, for example, to expire. The blocks coming in on the 1st of July, a bit of trouble for a few days, and then we move on.
Are you going to invoke Article 16? And if so, what is the timeline for taking action to resolve it? Because whatever happens, Lord Frost, this can't go on much longer before something gives. And I am seriously worried about the fabric of our society at this point.
What the Unionists, like the DUP, try to paint, the picture they're trying to paint is that Northern Ireland is about to collapse because there are checks on goods moving from GB to Northern Ireland. That their identity is under threat. Their identity is not under threat. People are free to move between Northern Ireland and Great Britain and Northern Ireland. These checks are on goods, not people. How is this undermining his Britishness? You have to also remember that he voted for this, but let's park that. How does checking goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland undermine his sense of identity? It doesn't. It's just a distractor. It's just an attempt to throw some red meat to his supporters. Deep down, if you were actually to sit down with Ian Paisley, he said, yeah, this doesn't impact me one bit. It doesn't impact my identity, of course not. But I need to say this in order to encourage people to come out and vote for me.
Mm. So I don't think it'd be right for me to go into the detail of our thinking about options. The Prime Minister's been clear that all options are on the table. He did.
All options are on the table means absolutely nothing.
Mention Article 16 over the weekend in his comments to the media. We will obviously not hesitate to invoke Article 16.
Now, as I've said on numerous occasions, Article 16 does not suspend the protocol. Article 16 suspends part of the protocol for a limited amount of time in order for both sides to come together and find a solution. What the DUP and others and Brexiteers seem to think, or pretend to think, is that you invoke Article 16 and the protocol finishes. No, that's not what happens. The Article 16 is a measure to protect the protocol. It allows you to suspend, as I said, part of it in order to get over a bump in the road.
Were his words, and pointing also to the EU's action in January on that. He said several times, we will do whatever.
The EU did not invoke Article 16. Another lie. Why do Brexiteers continue to lie about the EU invoking Article 16? They did not. Even Ian Paisley himself said, yeah, they considered invoking it for a few hours. That's the same as invoking it. No, it's not. They were considering invoking it. The Irish government got on the phone and said, no, don't do this. This is a stupid thing to do. They didn't invoke it, and the drama ended. But in some people's minds, the drama continued.
Whatever is necessary, and that is the view that's held across government here, because we are extremely concerned about the situation. Like you, the EU's action in January has sort of set off a train of events that.
See the way he's blaming the EU. That's Lord Frost's go-to. I get painted into a corner, blame the EU. We're not able to carry out these checks, blame the EU. We don't have the infrastructure in place, blame the EU. We're considering invoking Article 16, blame the EU. Like, is Boris Johnson that's been pushed by the EU to invoke Article 16? Now, Boris Johnson has threatened to invoke Article 16 on numerous occasions. I think it was twice or three times. But when the EU were considering it, it's a problem. But when Boris Johnson does it, it's patriotic.
Has meant, support for the protocol has corroded rapidly. Obviously, we've seen the First Minister depart, the change of another leader of a Unionist party. We've seen a chain of political developments that reflect this underlying sort of corroding of consent and impacts on identity, and that worries us. It worries us a lot.
He's trying to blow smoke up Ian Paisley's behind here. Yes, we care about the identity of the people of Northern Ireland. We see that the protocol has been eroded. This is just an attempt to keep the Unionists on side. But I can guarantee that Lord Frost doesn't believe anything that he's saying here.
And we are very conscious of the timelines. There are a number of timelines here. Obviously, there is at least one grace period on chilled meats, which expires at the end of the month. There is a political timetable in Northern Ireland of various components that we obviously need to work with and shape. And then we have the real world timetable of business and sustaining business operations from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, and affecting and shaping business decisions about supply chains. And none of those timetables are very long. So without being specific, we have to try and find solutions within timetables that reflect that reality.
Okay, but you have to implement the protocol. It doesn't matter about timetables or in relation to business or whatever. Businesses will adapt. Businesses are attempting to adapt. Now, probably what he's trying to do is he's pushing the idea that perhaps we can negotiate. Once again, he's not a negotiator. I've covered this before. He's going to try and negotiate with the European Union to extend the grace periods. Now, will the European Union extend the grace periods? I don't think so. Is it impossible for them to do so? No, it's not impossible. It's highly unlikely. Because what is the point in extending the grace periods? If Lord Frost and his government have not implemented the protocol, what's the point in extending the grace periods? If businesses are not ready, if the government is not ready, what's the point in giving them more time? They should have used the time that they had. If you give them more time, they're going to sit on their hands and they're not going to do anything. And then when the time runs out, they'll ask for another extension and then another extension. So the approach from the EU should be, no, time's up. But I think that's probably what's going to happen. The grace period for chilled meat, for example, will end at the end of June. There'll be a bit of a ruckus about it in Northern Ireland, but businesses are already adapting. Businesses have already decided, look, this is something we can't wait and see. We need to be proactive. And I think, as I've said before, the Brexiteers don't care about Northern Ireland. They don't care about business. We've seen it with these trade deals. They're just going to ignore these calls from the Unionists. I feel that the protocol, these parts of the protocol will be implemented. The grace periods will end and we'll move on. That will be it. But I'd like to know your opinions in the comments. Please let me know. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?